B.Dot is back on the JBP Rewind, and the moment he returns, everything starts heating up again. From Ish's infamous seat moment, to Mark Lamont Hill throwing subtle shots, to Flip questioning what's really going on behind the scenes, the tension in this podcast is still very much alive. But what really changes the energy is B.Dot's attitude, because he makes one thing very clear. He doesn't care about how the co-hosts feel, only what Joe Budden thinks. And that single mindset is exactly why this whole situation turns into more than just a podcast discussion. It becomes a full-blown power struggle inside the JBP universe. Alright, so what we're seeing here is a return breakdown around the whole ecosystem of Joe Budden and how his platform is currently being shaped by everything happening around Drake's rollout and the broader media reaction to it. And listen, the speaker is basically framing this as Joe coming back after a break and immediately stepping back into the center of controversy and commentary. Hold up, because the first thing mentioned is that part of the content is being pushed behind a paywall on Patreon, which immediately fuels the conversation about monetization and exclusivity in modern podcast culture. Now that's important because it ties directly into why people think certain reactions online aren't always just about opinions anymore. They're also about business strategy and audience migration. So when all these snippets are made available on YouTube while full breakdowns sit behind a subscription, it creates this perception that engagement is being engineered across platforms. Then the conversation shifts into internal dynamics, specifically around B.Dot returning to space and how that return is being interpreted inside the broader podcast environment. And listen, there's also mention of tension between co-hosts like Mark Lamont Hill, Justin LeBoy, and others in the ecosystem, which adds another layer of internal pressure to the show's dynamic. But hold up, the bigger point being made is that relationships and industry connections around Joe Budden extend far beyond just the podcast. And that's why people keep bringing up influence, not just in terms of content, but in terms of access, networking, and leverage within music media coverage. Then the commentary takes a personal turn, talking about being a supporter of Drake and how public perception shifts depending on who is winning in ongoing rap narratives. And listen, this is where it gets interesting, because the reaction described here shows how audience bias can shift based on momentum in a cultural debate. When Kendrick Lamar is perceived as winning, some listeners recalibrate how they interpret Drake's music and the media coverage around it. And that shift directly impacts how commentary platforms are received, especially when they've already been critical in the past. So at the end of the day, what this segment is really highlighting is not just podcast drama, it's how music, media narratives, audience loyalty, and monetization all collide in real time, especially when figures like Joe Budden sit at the center of it all. People always say all publicity is good publicity, but when an artist is dropping bars directly aimed at you, those moments hit differently, even though Joe keeps insisting he doesn't care. He's chasing the women I'm interested in. I'm not chasing the women he's after.
But you don't want to become his complete opposite in every way. You also don't want to be the main target of someone going on an industry-wide rant. Act and Joe Act have been bringing up a lot lately. You know what? Nope, I'm saving that for Patreon. They actually covered Drake in a somewhat more positive light than usual, and now the reaction is swinging right back the other way. The interviews have been picking up again. Not even gonna lie, I might cover them, I might not. They've been pushing more content, even with the paywall episodes. I saw Joe mention he has around 200,000 subscribers on Patreon. At the end of the day, Drake is moving through the industry while feeding the entire ecosystem around him. It's not just the people he directly supports like Maul and others in that circle. Everyone. My brother got frustrated with me when my mic broke and said it was the perfect time to drop a debate about the album and everything tied to Drake and Kendrick because even he knows this is the moment to capitalize, even though he doesn't even like making content. Even he knows this is the time to capitalize. So I can't even get mad at Joe anymore for putting certain things behind the paywall. Because honestly, at first, I thought he was going to fully lean into the paywall strategy when he started locking negativity clips and basketball discussions behind Patreon. I was like, damn, he's about to move everything behind the paywall. But he didn't. So when Drake drops an album, this is basically how his podcast originally took off. He has a direct connection to Drake's presence in media cycles. As much as Drake acts like he doesn't care about Joe, even though he constantly throws shots and gets mentioned alongside him after all these years, they're clearly tied together. They're clearly tied together. Joe had some of his biggest numbers whenever he was breaking down Drake projects like Views and Scorpion, and during every major album rollout. And even though people now watch the podcast for the drama and soap opera energy, it originally built its foundation on those same conversations. Drake can't help being the biggest artist in the world, and this situation just proves it again. Now we just have to see if B.Dot can match the numbers Drake pulls. But anyway, this is a JVP review. This isn't a Drake review. It feels good to be back. Can't lie, I missed you guys while I was gone. I was like, damn, I really need to get my setup back together. And I didn't even realize it wasn't just about money, because I actually had the money for a mic a couple days ago. I started checking different stores and realized my old setup was pretty unique, and the Samsung mic I used to have, I actually had to order it, and I didn't want to wait for shipping even though Amazon could have delivered it quickly. I ended up going to Guitar Center and finally picked up a mic. I was like, damn, they got audio gear everywhere in here. Found a mic I probably wouldn't have normally chosen. I ended up spending another $100, and now we're about to get back to it.
So yeah, I'm about to start pumping out videos back to back. Listen, apologies in advance if the next 4 or 5 videos have me tweaking the audio, because I'm still figuring out all the controls, the interface, and how to work the equalizer. And I ain't never done this professionally, but this mic is basically pushing me to level up. But yeah, we're getting right back to it. I just wanted to basically make this an I'm back video, just letting y'all know I didn't forget about y'all. And I do have my other page going crazy right now, and I'm not gonna hold y'all. I've already dropped 6 videos, we already hit monetization, and we did it in just a week, and it's got me super motivated. I might shout it out, but I don't really want to push it too heavy. I want people to find the content however they find it, so I know the audience I'm building is real and organic. But I am about to launch a sports page. What I just saw Victor Wembanyama do last night had me thinking I'm locked into this sports lane. I'm fully locked in. I'm just trying to let y'all know and motivate y'all. Start creating content. I don't care if you already make content and feel like you've got a lane, you can build a whole new lane. You can literally build a whole new identity. You can talk about whatever you actually want to talk about. YouTube is pushing smaller creators right now. Patreon is also pushing smaller creators because they're trying to save money while still bringing people in. So they're boosting smaller creators who are actually making good content as much as possible. Right now is the time to jump in, and I strongly advise you to do it.